For as long as anyone can remember, the comedy world was monopolized by those on the political left. And, for a time, regardless of your political leanings, that wasn't such a problem. Conservatives and liberals alike could appreciate witty social commentary and sometimes shocking humor, and yet those times are ever more fading into distant memory. Coinciding with our broader political disagreements is a shift in what we can expect from mainstream comedy. More and more, what could once be appreciated universally is becoming yet another cultural battleground, saturated in seriousness. To some degree, the political left was on the side of funny because it mocked the powers that be. Where there was once a white Christian hegemony, as the decades have passed, so too is that group's influence. For this reason, celebrities shouting profanities at Trump and his supporters don't seem brave to anyone but themselves. In the same way, self-identified comedians who torture the corpse of Trump Nazi jokes don't come across to anyone as especially funny. It's easy to imagine that even those in the resistance's ranks themselves don't find them funny, but they laugh along for the sake of the cause. The ultimate reason that these jokes aren't funny isn't just that they're stale, even though that is a major reason, but it has even more to do with the fact they've long since stopped being boundary-pushing or thought-provoking. Although Trump's GOP has the reins of political power, his side certainly lacks any mainstream cultural influence whatsoever. Maybe the left's comedic cabal could be forgiven for the mere act of being unfunny, but they take preserving their stranglehold on comedy a step further. They're not funny because theirs is the accepted orthodoxy, even if the offender is actually funny. One example that comes to mind is Dave Chappelle, someone who is decidedly on the political left, but who also ignores politically correct comedic restrictions. Mr. Chappelle is a man who stepped aside from comedy for 10 years, as if he was placed into a cryo chamber. When he re-emerged, it seemed as if the entire surface of comedy had taken on a new form. His 10-year hiatus left him oblivious to what had become the industry he was once at the top of. Where before, his brand of off-color comedy, rife with sketches about blind black Klansmen and white families with the last name Nagar, he suddenly couldn't make jokes if they brushed up against a select class of protected groups, like gays or trans. Chappelle, a liberal of his time, was suddenly accused of bigotry, which is thought to be exclusive to the right. In the time since Chappelle's self-exodus, the void has been filled by proxy political pundits like Trevor Noah, Jimmy Kimmel, and Stephen Colbert. Injecting each and every single one of their stale routines with Trump jokes, these comedians lack even the slightest hint of self-awareness. Mr. Colbert, for example, rolled out a painfully unfunny character in the form of Tuck Buckford. Colbert's character is a satirization of Alex Jones, a fringe character who is, from time to time, actually funny, and more importantly, self-aware. What his sketch misses is that the very instances Colbert is mocking are of Jones satirizing himself. While he thinks he's highlighting Jones as a ridiculous buffoon, he's really displaying that he's not in on the joke to begin with, which is a fitting metaphor for his craft as a whole today. He and his Comedy Central alumni then wonder why their sneering brand of self-serious comedy isn't connecting with vast swaths of the country. This clueless virus has slowly eroded whatever skill they have, with every routine becoming a repeat of a repeat, forever lacking in novelty. Luckily for everyone who still enjoys comedy, Chappelle's career wasn't cordoned off by its self-appointed gatekeepers. In large part, this is because most people enjoy a vibrant, creative space, rather than one with a landmine around every joke. But if a black, liberal comedian can be tarred in this way, what of a white, right-wing comedian, especially one not nearly as established in public nostalgia as Mr. Chappelle? Perhaps the public wouldn't be so skeptical, which means they'd be less likely to double-check swirling blog accusations of bigotry. One clear example can be found in comedy troupe $1 Million Extreme, particularly its lead man, Sam Hyde. After years of putting out independent sketch comedy online, Sam Hyde's group finally secured its own show on Adult Swim. Called World Peace, it was a piece of observational and absurdist comedy. Like much good comedy, it satirized cultural phenomena in ways not always obvious. This allowed a class of political hypochondriac journalists to impose their own interpretations onto it, mainly that it was designed to cater to the alt-right. The new standard for alt-right arose from virtual toilet bowls like BuzzFeed, whose blogger Joe Burstein wrote the hot take that led the charge against Hyde's alt-right show. To the clergymen of comedy, alt-right simply means to be on the internet, funny, and potentially right-wing. That said, even Bernie bros like noted and busy music nerd Anthony Fantano haven't been spared the branding because of his association with meme frogs. Because of a similar smear carelessly pumped out by the Fader, Mr. Fantano had to cancel his entire tour. As far as Mr. Hyde's show is concerned, in one sketch he did play a benevolent date show host, trying to improve the sex life of a paraplegic whose secret name was David Duke, which neither he nor co-host Nitro Dubs could call him. Sam Hyde's style of comedy is deliberately provocative. It has been dubbed an elaborate inside joke that panders to elements of white nationalism. Predictably, that second part falls short of the truth, but that claim isn't entirely wrong. World peace in MDE is an inside joke at the expense of outrage fetishists, the likes of Joe Burstein. Hyde's David Duke joke obviously isn't a dog whistle to the alt-right. It exemplifies his style of comedy, which is deliberately absurd for the sake of it. Much of the tragedy in the defamation of Sam Hyde's work comes from the fact that it's not as if the market had spoke. A group of Nazi-deprived journalists created enough noise that it jittered TV executives into doing their bidding, even while his show had both a solid opening of 1 million viewers, which it retained until its finale. This isn't the first time a minority of those seeking out reasons to be outraged successfully quashed a form of creative expression. During a time the likes of Colbert and Noah apparently still live in, the outrage with white rural Christians they mock tirelessly. The Twilight Zone's own Rod Serling, for example, ran a program in which a lassie gave birth to puppies. Despite how well received the show itself was, a series of letters poured in. The director of the network decided to ban anything depicting the birth process.
Who's the culprit? Is it the network, the sponsor? It sure is not the FCC.
No, it's certainly not the FCC, ideally speaking, of course. It's a combination of culprits in this case, Mike. It's partly network. It's principally agency and sponsor. In many ways, I think it's the audience themselves.
How do you mean?
Well, I'll give you an example. About a year ago, roughly 11 or 12 months ago, on the Lassie show. This is a story usually told by Sheldon Leonard, who was then associated with the show. Lassie was having puppies, and I have two little girls, then aged 5 and 3, who are greatly enamored of this beautiful collie, and they watched the show with great interest, and Lassie gave birth to puppies. And Mike, it was probably one of the most tasteful and delightful and warm things depicting what is this wondrous thing that is birth. And after the show, I think there were many congratulations all around, because it was a lovely show. The sort of thing I'd love my kids to watch, to show them what is the birth process and how marvelous it is. They got many, many cards and letters. Sample card from the Deep South, this was. If I wanted my kids to watch sex shows, I wouldn't have had them turn on that. I could take them to burlesque shows. And as a result of the influx of mail, many of the cards, incidentally, as Sheldon tells it, were postmarked at identical moments, all in the same handwriting, but each was counted as a singular piece of mail. And as a result, the directive went down that there would be no shows having anything to do with puppies, that is, in the actual birth process. Well, obviously, it is this wild lunatic fringe of letter writers that greatly affect what the sponsor has in mind.
These lunatic fringe of letter writers that once threatened boundary-pushing entertainment from the South appear to have migrated into the offices of BuzzFeed. One thing that holds true today, as it did then, is that TV networks have and always will shy away from controversy. But their definition of controversy isn't exactly what you might think of it as. For networks, controversy can be generated by an unknown heckler on a website known for its "Do you have big dick energy" style quizzes. The question we should ask ourselves then is who we should allow to dictate what is funny or even acceptable. That isn't a minor question, but it's one we're allowing the BuzzFeeds and the Faders of the world to answer for us.